Hello everyone, my name is Akesh Gupta and I'm with Lightspeed Solutions. In this presentation, I'm eager to share the database design for the optimal output of your IronSpeed application using IronSpeed Designer. Before you begin any single thing in IronSpeed Designer, it is very vital that you design the database which will assist the IronSpeed product. Just to begin with, we made a blank database by the name ISD Training. Right now, it does not have any tables, and we will begin with a new table. So let's just say we want to add a table by the name customer. The very first thing you should always have in every single table is a primary key. A primary key is very vital for any database operations. Primary key is the key which makes sure that the value will remain constant throughout all operations. And primary key is needed for IronSpeed to build, add, edit, and view page. In case the primary key is missing from a table, IronSpeed will not be able to make add, edit, view pages without someone creating a virtual primary key, and hence the primary key is very critical. So in this case, I'm going to just define a customer ID, and I'm going to assign it to be an auto increment field. For those of you who are looking at this is the SQL Server. Of course, the similar thing can be followed in MySQL as well as Access or Oracle. So now, once we define a customer ID field, which is an auto increment, I can assign it as a primary key, and now I can put my names as my other fields as first name, last name, and so on. Now, as far as the size is concerned, it is very important to define the size of the field. Depending on the size of the field, IronSpeed will decide whether it should show in a single line or a multi-line. And the magic number there is 50. If it is over 50 characters, IronSpeed is going to automatically assume multi-line. And if it's less than 50 characters or up to 50 characters, it's going to be in a single line. So I always keep that into mind, just so that you do not have to make a lot of changes at the end of the application. In addition, the way you name the fields also makes a big difference how IronSpeed is automatically going to assign its labels. Of course, IronSpeed allows you to go in and relabel all the field labels, but it's important to begin right from the database. So the more work you put into the database structure, the less you will have to do with an IronSpeed Designer. So as you can see in this particular example, I made the fields first name, last name. I defined their data types as 50 characters. And if you want these fields to be required in the application, I can surely do that. So let's say, for example, we give this particular design discussion, and I basically put this also as 50. I'm going to take a little different approach and make it not required, and I can save this thing as customer. Now, so what I've done here is I made a table by the name customer where I have a customer ID, which is primary key. I have two fields, first name and last name, and the third field is email. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build an IronSpeed application pretty quickly, and then we will talk about how our decisions of database design really impacted our IronSpeed Designer. So let's make a new application. I believe actually this is a wrong version, so I apologize for starting this. Let's actually start IronSpeed Designer. We're going to make a new application here very quickly. Use our same water theme. Talk to the database. Right away, as you can see, as soon as you pick the entity, the reason system is able to let you pick add, edit, and other things. This is because there's a primary key. If there was no primary key, system would not have shown you this, and it would have forced you to build the virtual primary keys, which, yes, for the cases where we have no choice, we can use it, but I always recommend that if we have the ability to define the primary key, we should do so. The very fact that we made the field auto increment, which means IronSpeed is smart enough to say, since this field is getting calculated its values automatically, it will not show on the screen because it's more of a hidden field. So I click on next. These are the pages I want to build. I want to basically just use our regular, like next, 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 nothing change, every single thing default. What you're viewing here is how IronSpeed used the metadata from the database to make its decisions, and which is very, very critical. I highly recommend spending sufficient time in the beginning of the database design before you dive into the application. We usually spend a week to 2 weeks with our customers just designing the database because it is that critical. As you can see, system basically went in to customers. You want to basically add a customer. Right away, system automatically named the field first name, last name, email, and which two fields are required. The two fields which were defined in the database as being not null. Now, what happens if you go back in here and make the field size 100, make it not required, click on save, go back to your RNSP designer, tell the system to resync, which is fine, which is something you folks are all familiar with. So what I just did, I resynchronized my application to the new database layout, which is well and good. But if you will notice here, when I went to the application and try to click on add customer, I made the field length 100 characters of my email, but my email form here still does not show it to be 100 characters just because it was changed in the database. Same thing when I click on save, as you can see, my email address is not being shown as required. Now for me to rely on this thing to work right, what's needed? I need to go back to my layout editor, go back to add customer, go back to the email field, go back to its properties, and within properties, I need to tell, first of all, it's required because these decisions were made when the pages were built for the very first time. And hence, it's very critical to make sure your data model is perfect before you even start building the very first page. And then you need to go into text mode to say it's going to be a single multi-line. Then you need to define whatever rows you want. And we can say it's 2 rows. And the width could be something, I just say give 2 rows and just make it required. Now, unfortunately, I have to do the same thing on the edit customer. I have to go back to the edit email field, make it required true, set it to multi-line, number of rows to say 2, and rebuild. So as you can see, one change which seemed simple enough to do in database design took us few more extra steps to finally put every single thing with an RNSP designer. It's not the RNSP designer's fault because a lot of decisions were made in the very beginning to force, or not to force, but to let RNSpeed generate what is the right thing to generate. Once you make the changes to the database, it's your responsibility to go back to every single field and alter. So this is the very first thing you can do. Make sure every single table has a primary key. Make sure all the column names are as precise as you could expect them to be. By you following the uppercase, lowercase naming convention, RNSpeed automatically will make the characters by putting a space between the lowercase and the uppercase, unless and until the word is very commonly all uppercase characters. So all these small things do assist in your saving of time in using RNSpeed Designer, and hence good results. If you notice, what I can do is I can delete the entire customer entity, and let's get rid of every single thing in customers. I will also get rid of the menu panels because these are the only two things which get generated. And I will go ahead and rebuild. So now that there's no information about the customer entity, I'm going to sync up my database. And now we're going to go and mimic as if we are doing every single thing from scratch for the very first time. Now when we go to the application wizard, go to pages and try to build the pages for the customer entity again. And let's see how RNSpeed re-evaluates the updated database design for us to get new results. it will be very obvious that since now Speed already knew about the updated database, it basically made sure all fields are required. In this particular case, for even for 100 characters, Speed is not making the change. So I was probably, if I'm not 100% sure, but I was expecting it to be more than 50 characters. So that's something we need to reevaluate whether it's the limit is 50 or 100 at which there's a little break from a single line to multi-line. But as you can see, it did make a difference. Of course, if I go ahead and make the field as 500 or 1000, you will notice that Speed will automatically turn it into more of a multi-line for sure. Let's sync the database schema. Speed understood every single thing. And I go back to my layout editor, application wizard, pages. They are just basic operations. That's why I was just basically going through this as quickly as possible. This must be an issue because even at 500 characters, or you know what, it's probably not even an issue when you are building up the application pages. One of the things which is new in version 11 is during the add page, when you can configure what type of fields are you looking for and at what text. I believe it's something with application wizard options where system tells you. I'm not 100% sure where the field is, but there is a place where we can define what is the length of the field above which system will automatically convert to a multi-row. I need to take a look at it before I can be 100% sure. Please review the forum in upcoming time, and I will definitely be putting some details up there. So that's basically was one quick thing you can learn about every single time you are trying to build a table to assist Speed in a lot of decision making. So let's actually go back, make it not required, and this time put another field by the name customer status. Now, of course, this customer status, we would like it to be like a quick selector or a drop down. So let's define it as a primary key and, foreign key, and leave it empty for the time being, save it, and we will build another table by the name customer status ID, because customer status is also a primary key, because again, I'd highly recommend that every single table does have a primary key. In this particular case, I also made it auto increment. I'm going to save it as a customer status. So if you think about it, we have two tables, and let's make a small ER diagram pretty quickly here. We have two tables here. One is customer status, other is customer. Customer has a customer status. Of course, really this is a foreign key to this particular primary key. One thing we can do is we can define that in Speed, in your SQL database. And then when Speed basically reads this information, it is smart enough to say that the customer status is a foreign key from a customer table into customer status ID in the customer status table, and hence customer table should really have a foreign key. So let's actually leave it here without the relationship, and then we want to know, or we want to see what really happens. So once again, I'm going to delete every single thing I made just so that it makes it easy. Erasing my database. And build my pages from customer and customer status. So I would like to build my pages for customer as well as customer status and let the system run. Now, of course, the customer status could be active and inactive. So for the very first thing we'll do is we'll take care of the customer status with two values of active and inactive. And as in the customer status table, we definitely have a field. So in customer status, we can basically add active and inactive, has two different statuses for customers. But when I go to my customer and try to add a customer, this I was expecting to be a drop down. Of course, it's not a drop down. So what are my choices? My choices are A. One option here could be that I manually configure it, which could be really a lot of work if I was to manually configure it, going through all the properties and data source and so on. Option is the easiest option here is build the relationship. So this way, system knows that one customer status can have many customers, and each customer must have one customer status. Now, once I make this change, I'm going to get rid of every single thing. I will leave the customer status field there is, and I will go to the configure menu and remove every single thing to do with customer because system is going to regenerate in the menu. I would like to now sync my database schema so that my relationship information is being transferred from the database to the RNSpeed designer. Now I'm ready to rebuild my product. And this time I will only pick customer because customer status table is already built. Now that RNSpeed designer knew that there was a primary key foreign key relationship between customer table and a customer status table, the way RNSpeed build your add edit page, system is smart enough to automatically select this as a quick selector because that is the default. Of course, now the issues are it is showing me primary keys and not the secondary, like not the main status. That can all be resolved by going back to the database and specifying for a customer status in customer. If you notice, it's a foreign key, and we are going to be able to define here what is my display as, that I would like to display it as a customer status field. Now all this extra work we have to do because the relationship was not defined upfront. Had this relationship been defined upfront, we don't have to go through these hoops to get everything going. And hence the importance of a database design before you folks dive into the application. So now if I click on add a customer, just refresh the page, we'll add a customer, system shows me my quick selector, I click on it and I'm able to see my active and inactive. So as you can see, foreign key relationships are very, very critical in a good database design before you begin the application. Now what happens if for one reason or the other relationships are not defined in the database, but you would like to take the advantage of them? What RNSpeed has done is it has provided us a great feature to say, I'm going to basically now mimic that my customer table does not exist, my customer table has not been processed, customer status has not been processed, and hence no menus. What I'm really doing is I'm trying to kind of like start from scratch without going through the wizard again. Sync my application to the database schema. Before you begin any application, as you can see, system was smart enough to say that my customer status ID was a primary key, and as you can notice, it says it's yes. On the customer table, customer ID was a primary key, which you can also see it says yes. What it does not say is that the customer status ID of the customer table is really a foreign key to the customer status ID, which was the primary key of the customer status table. This is something we can tell the system by defining a virtual foreign key. So if the relationships are not there in the database and for one reason or the other, they cannot be created, or it allows you to create the relationship from a foreign key back to a primary key in the system. So now as you can see, I created a virtual relationship which by default is going to serve the same purpose as if the physical relationships were created in the database before IronSpeed started evaluating it. So in this particular case, one thing I want to share here is you should understand that the data definition was altered by us defining some relationships. And now when we go back to the application wizard and create pages for my customer and status, click on finish. What I'm expecting is even in the time when there's no relationship defined in the database, by us creating the virtual relationships in the application, system is smart enough to say that when I'm looking at my adding a customer, not only a drop-down list was automatically defined or a quick selector, its values are still actually 1 and 2 because we again missed it in our database layout. When we were here, we should have actually changed it to not say customer status ID. It should have been customer DB record, customer status field. This is something we missed when we made the relationship as a virtual key. We did not populate this value, so of course I had to actually redo it. And once again, this proves my basic point that the more we rely on database metadata, the less work it is in RSP Designer. So in a sense, what are the things that we want to take out of this presentation? First of all, a well-built database is going to provide tremendous advantage to RSP Designer. When we talk about database, it should be fully normalized. If your database model is fully normalized with proper primary key and foreign key, it really assists RSP Designer. Make sure your column names are as meaningful so that they can aid in the label for the fields to be displayed on the screen. Through some experience, you will realize that some fields, like if you notice, I'm suffixing by the word ID. That tells me it's either a PK or an FK. But at the same time, RNSpeed ignores that in any of the labels. So right there is a good way to tell whether the field is a foreign key or a primary key and not worry about it whether it will be something RNSpeed will display as ID. If you have the ability, always create the relationship between entities in the database before using RNSpeed, or if you unfortunately do not have that ability because of some DBA restrictions, scan the database, define the relationships by defining them as virtual foreign keys before you start building the RNSpeed pages. Try to be consistent in naming the fields. The more consistent you are, the better results you will see. Of course, if you try to define database views, let's make a pretty quick database view here. So I can easily make a database view. In database view, what's happening is you really have like customer ID and all the status. So what we have done here is we actually should have added one record. So let's basically add a record here. Sorry about that. That's actually, I'm just going to rebuild it and then go back. So views can be used by folks to display data from multiple tables. And as such, by the nature, views are not editable. As a matter of fact, if I just try to build it, a view, which I would like to cover here very quickly. So as you can see, let's actually add a customer by the name John Doe, who's an active customer. And okay, all right, so we added a John Doe as a customer and everything is looking good. Now when I run a view, I can basically see I have a customer by the name John Doe. That's his customer ID. That's the customer active status. And I can save this view as saying all customers. So the advantage of a view is that sometimes from time to time, you can bring in data from multiple tables and you can show only the column that you're interested in. Now, when you go into RSP Designer, the view will be listed by default. Now, if you notice, a view by default is not included in the application. I can bring the view in the application by just saying I would like to include this view. But since the view does not have any primary key, it is not allowed to do insert, update, and delete. It's another story that if you try to update or delete this view, you will get other issues, because if SQL view cannot be done, then IronSpeed really can't do anything. But to show you guys that if I try to go in and try to say I want to make a page out of this view, system is saying if you go ahead and try to make pages of this types, you will need to define a primary key. The only page where you do not need to define a primary key is a regular show page, because during show it does not matter. If I click on next, system is going to say on this view you must define this as a virtual primary key. So it almost sounds like every single view you need to define one or more columns, the combination of which will make the data almost unique. Once you are able to do that, then system will let you build your pages, add page, edit page, and as far as whether their actions of saving will be effective or not, that's a different situation or different question. Of course, we have options where at least if the pages are built, you can let the user interact with it, and on the save button you can overwrite the code to say you can actually go through the record and then save it in the underlying tables. That is actually beyond the scope of this presentation. That definitely we can cover in another presentation, but we wanted to show you why it is so critical for you to define your database table the right way, database fields the right way, their data types, their required, not required fields, whether they are primary keys, if they're auto increments, and so on. Another important reason why database names should be very consistent is that if you want to build some kind of auditing that you want to build in the system. So say for example, here we have customer status. I want to say created on and created by. So created on, let's just put one field. When was it created on? I can say date time. And same thing on the customer, I can put created on. If you define the fields which are exactly identical, IronSpeed also has the ability where you can use what we call as the batch maestro wizard to define some automatic processing. So let me sync my schema. Now when I go to my tools, I can configure my batch wizard where I can say every single field while initializing, I would like to say when created on, I would like to initialize created on to say when it's inserting, automatically update today's date, or I can put any function by saying now, because it's not only date, it's date and time. So one of the things I want to point out here is if you have named your columns in a very consistent format, it really comes in handy that you can define more of a global code which IronSpeed Designer will automatically take care of in its processing. Of course, you always have an option to go back and go page by page and put this field on the screen with its predefined formatted value, but that probably will take longer. So let's actually try to add another customer just so that we can make sure that the created on date is automatically getting populated. This time I'm going to create an account for myself. I'm going to make it active and give it an email. As you can see, we did not put the created on field here on the screen with predefined value or any formula. We told the batchmeister wizard to automatically take care of it. And now if I go back to my database, I want to open up the database at the database level just to see the table at the database level to see what the values are. And as you can see, my created on automatically got populated. Hopefully the video is able to share with you how critical it is to prepare your database upfront. Do not worry about that you are going behind in time. As a matter of fact, you will catch up if you define the database well before you even start beginning the IronSpeed application. Remember, every single time you build pages, once they are generated, the decisions that IronSpeed designer took based on the metadata will but they can only be manually adjusted. By changing the database schema after the pages have been generated, you only have two choices. Either you delete all the pages and rebuild, or you basically have to go and manually make all the changes. Hopefully you folks enjoyed the video, and keep watching for more. And if you need assistance, please do not hesitate to visit the IronSpeed forum. Thanks for watching.